Sorry, people, just bear with me one moment. I'm just also organising to go live.
Screen is
Happy Thursday to everyone. Couple of seconds, and I'll just make sure that this works.
Is it working?
Okay, yeah. Excellent. All right, so we are live on Facebook, and we're also recording this session. So I'd like to say good morning, everyone, and welcome on this Thursday. And maybe to start with, I will just share a little bit about myself and what I do, and then I can throw over to, we do have a wonderful guest on today. If I pronounce this right, is it Ainee?
Yeah.
Ainee Shah, and Ainee is a mindfulness and self-discovery, mindfulness, self-discovery, and transformational coach as well. But maybe to kick off with, so I do these guest interviews. I usually do a couple every month, just to give value to my community and other people who may get benefit from hearing from a lot of different perspectives and different people in the mental health space. So myself, my name is Marcus Ross. For those who don't know me, I'm from Men's Elevate Counselling. I've been on a bit of a life journey and transformation myself. I experienced separation back early in 2020, and I was a little bit lost at that time, and so it sort of forced me in a way to into making some changes in my life and getting a little bit clearer on purpose. So that's what led to me changing from a career in retail management to something where I wanted to be able to help other people, other men specifically, on the journey, the journey of separation when they may be in that place at that particular point, I guess, early on in the stages, and just to obviously, hopefully, using my own experience to help and guide other men on that journey. So yeah, that's now my passion, obviously, to help other men in that space. And what I specifically do is I help separated men take control of their lives, rediscover their purpose, and build confidence using my EPIC strategy. So yeah, if you like to know more about the EPIC strategy, then I'm sure we'll discuss at the end how you can get in touch. You can sort of get in touch with both of us if you have further questions, or if you'd like to book in a chat. So so just a little bit of a background on myself. So, and like I say, we've been having these guest interviews. I usually try and do a couple every month, and we have some wonderful people come on and talk about different areas of mental health and practical strategies and tools that we can use to help people manage in those situations. So the topic that we're talking about today is transforming shame and guilt, and I guess being able to let it go. And I think myself personally, I see this a lot with my own clients, where they feel feeling a sense of failure, shame, and guilt, or what may have been, their own mistake or behaviours. If we're talking about, say, in a relationship, for example, and I know I've felt it myself as well, and yeah, feeling that guilt and shame, and being able to, I guess, process that, but actually transform it into a way that we're able to move forwards without that sort of overtaking our lives. So yeah, I see that a lot, and it's definitely, I think, a really and important and hot topic at the moment. And so I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what I might do now is I'll throw over to Ainee, and I'll just get you to share a little bit more about yourself and how you help people.
Yeah, just to share a little bit about myself, like you, Marcus, I also went through quite a bit myself, but that was some time ago. It was about 6 years ago when I went into the journey of deepening my practice and mindfulness and compassion as a teacher. And what what I would really agree with you is really that we are always at war with ourselves, okay? And guilt and shame does not happen only to men but to women too. I think everyone have this guilt and shame. So when I was going through um, when I was in the rabbit hole myself 6 years ago, I was going through quite a lot of guilt and shame. And what really triggers me was that my grandmother took her life, and I blame myself for that. I think we all can resonate with the stories of blaming ourselves for something that happened, and that actually triggers back into the childhood trauma that I didn't realize that I had, that I'm the eldest in the family, and being exemplary and being there is something that was expected of me. And what I realized when I do the inner work myself, I realized that I have always been internalizing the message to myself that I'm not good enough. So I keep striving. Right, I did, I went to the university, I graduated with honors degree, I came back and I worked and I climbed myself up in a corporate ladder in an engineering industry, and I made it up there, but something inside me, it's just not in line with myself, you know. Yeah, it looks good on the outside, but hell, I'm suffering inside. Yeah.
I think that happens a lot, doesn't it? With we obviously want to give this image and this persona that everything's under control and that we're doing well, but quite often we'll sort of suppress or avoid different feelings, and because we feel a lot of the time we may not feel comfortable talking about it, or may not want to be judged, want to feel judged about it. So yeah, I think that's definitely something a lot of people struggle with different things and don't necessarily talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. And this invites a lot of unpleasant emotions, the feeling of guilt, shame, blame, and we're always at war with ourselves, that self-aversion, um, self-criticism, judgment, like you say, self-blame. And it only blocks our expansion, our consciousness and our understanding of being fully human and living with our hearts. We
Mm.
shut off, we kind of like cocoon ourselves in a way that, yeah, right? And I believe that shame has got a lot to do with social anxiety as well. I have some clients who are facing social anxiety, and there are layers and layers we got to work on, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
fear base and what's underneath the fear of rejection, like you said, the fear of abandonment, the fear of success, and the fear of failure. And all this is that shame, it took me a while to work on it myself.
Yeah, so you spoke before about alignment, and that really resonated with me because something that I needed to do, you know, back when I was not doing so well was that I needed to get really clear on my purpose and what, you know, what I was actually working towards. Um, so for me, that was really key. Was you know thinking about what what my values were and what kind of person that I wanted to show up as. Um, the other question, big question that I sort of thought about was where would I like to be in say 5 years time. So that along with getting clear on values, that for me that really allowed me to get really clear on, you know, what kind of person I wanted to be, and to know when I was living in alignment with my values. So yeah, so how important do you feel like that alignment, I guess alignment and having that purpose, how important do you feel like that is um, for people?
I totally resonate and agree with you. We all have values, and that values and the qualities of what makes who we are, you know. And sometimes we suppress those values just to meet expectation, just to meet the people who judge us. And sometimes I can see, if even in my own clients and students or my own family members, to say, we are just doing what others expected us to do, and sometimes against our values. It's something that I can resonate with you. The things that I do in my past work, sometimes I felt like it is not what it is, you know. It is not me, but I had to do or had to do, you know, just to survive. And that is not in alignment with who we are, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Mm.
so what do you think are some things that people can do for themselves? Obviously, we spoke about, I guess, within yourself, like the conversations and the relationship. Maybe I think hopefully that's what you're referring to before when you start relationship with yourself and your communication with yourself.
Yeah.
That being really important. And what other things do you feel you know, can help people to move past, or not even move past, I guess, be able to process the feelings that they're having, but then also be able to, like you say, transform that, um, to be able to letting go and future to the future that you know, that people may want.
Yeah. So what I feel is, in my own experience and in my clients and students, is that we are actually not in terms with ourselves, right? So when we are not in terms with ourselves, that's where we wanted to be in a wise relationship with ourselves, know who we are, know our values. And but because we have this guilt, today's topic is about guilt and shame, it blocks us actually from moving forward, because we always come back, you know. Something triggers, we come back, you know. There's a triggers and we come back and blame ourselves. So what I do like to share here is the difference between guilt and shame, which is something very important. So we all know that guilt and shame brings a sense of unworthiness in us, a lack of value of self, and often leads to loneliness, which further leads to depression and can be suicidal. I've seen, you know, that happening. And I came across a story that I like to share. Perhaps many might resonate with this. Is a man who had a happy family with a wife with 2 children. And one day, when he came back from a short trip with his wife and a younger daughter, to find out that his older son was shot dead in the street, on the street. So the crippling effects of guilt and shame, you know, took over him just in seconds, and he found himself taking sleeping pills and dosage is not enough, increased the dosage, and went on with drugs. Yeah, for a couple of years. So in less than 6 months, he lost everything he had built because of that guilt and shame. Left his wife and daughter, and he ended up on the streets. Right? So this is a true story. So another true story that I'd like to share is also what I've heard when I volunteer at the Kanchana Soup Kitchen. So what we did is we distribute food to the homeless on the streets past midnight. So there was a rich man, a very, very rich man who lives in the mansion, but he used to live with his abusive wife, who has been abusing him with words that puts him down, shame on you and things like that. So things attacked a sense of self in him, right? So after many years putting off with this abusive wife, he developed a sense of shame, left the family, left the big house, left the children, and he lived on the streets. Right. So these things actually happen. They are true stories. I've seen these people. And so both feelings of shame and guilt really attack the lack of self, our sense of who we are. And the difference is that guilt is something, I did something wrong, I make a mistake. So that's not so bad, all right? I'm guilty of something, I spilled the milk, or I did something wrong. But shame is very, very powerful, all right? It's the most destructive emotion, as when we start to internalize that I did something wrong, often enough, it becomes I am wrong. It becomes I am the mistake.
Yeah. So yeah, shame could be, say, like a pattern of behavior that you got into that was negative, couldn't it?
Yes, yes. So the more we feel guilty of some things that we did wrong, eventually it all adds up to I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I don't deserve love. I'm hopeless.
So
And
then
it gets,
you've got a self judgment there then, haven't you?
yeah. And 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 this actually gets internalized in our system, and it gets hardwired into our brain. And each time when something happens or we encounter a similar situation, our reaction is the same. So it's like you're going round and round in a never ending story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So shame, as we all know, that it really washes over you and soaking you into the bones. And it does, I've got that feeling, and I can really feel how it's going to feel for people who have shame. But the I would say that the shame is quite subtle, right? Because we talk about fear of rejection, fear of social anxiety, fear of failure. But what's underneath fear is actually shame. That is quite hard and quite difficult to identify. So it's not an embarrassment, but it's really deeper than that. So I would like to quote Carl Jung. He described shame as a soul-eating emotion, which is, yeah. And these feelings hold us back. It shatters our dreams and our well-being. It's very, very destructive if we are not willing enough to actually address it or face it, and understand where this come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being the fact that, like you said, we may not necessarily be aware,
Mm-hmm.
that we're feeling that shame. I know a lot of the work that I do is based around um, ACT therapy, which is, bringing yourself back to the body and, living in the present, making sure that you're present in the here and now. So do you feel like that, that would be really important, tools and strategies to use at this time?
Yeah. So I like to share a bit on the few steps that we can go through in terms of
Yes,
recognizing the shame, accepting it,
yes.
and then of course we'll go into what are practices, the antidote of shame, and healing and transforming.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I did mention earlier my grandmother took her life, and I blame myself. I've taken a lot of time to work on that, and that's what I will be sharing as well. What are the practices that have helped me work on my own guilt and shame, and
Yep,
finally transform myself with an open heart.
yep.
But I do also want to share that this is not a magic pill, right? It's gonna take time, and it's gonna take our patience and our willingness to really go into it. So my advice for those of you who are listening, to trust in the process, okay, and all will be well. So when we are in the state of self-aversion, our hearts shuts, right? So it's like literally saying, I hate myself, right? So how can we love ourselves when we are telling ourselves that I hate ourselves? I hate myself, right? But the good news is that um, shame is not our fault, is not your fault. So I'd like you to remember that shame is not your fault, okay? It comes in all shapes and sizes, and it's a conditioning that is beyond our control, such as childhood trauma, right? Now, shame is definitely not your fault, but it is our responsibility. It is your responsibility to work on it if we want to transform. So recognize means what we're trying to do is we want to recognize what is happening and to know that we are struggling, right? Instead of reacting, instead of pushing it away. So there are many things that we do just to avoid that feeling because it's just hard to feel, it's painful. It hurts in the heart, right? So that's what when people talk about the fight, flight, and flee, it is exactly what it is because that's what we do. Sometimes when we are triggered or our sense of self-worth is triggered, we experience emotional reactivity. We can explode outward, like you say, very unconsciously. We outburst, rage, frustration, we throw out tantrums, anger. That's one, we want to recognize that. Secondly, many also buckle inward, which means self-blame. Oh, it's me again, I'm wrong, that you come back the same loop, criticize ourselves. And sometimes that leads to self-pity, internalizing the same message over and over. And of course, we want to also take note and notice, are we avoiding, right? Avoidance, also known as disassociation, which means our mind leaves the body. Let's say we come back to the present moment. Our mind leaves the bodies. We avoid shame by numbing our feelings, by suppressing our feelings, or by distracting ourselves with something else, right? And very often it's comfort eating, right? Or, it can go worse to substance abuse, drugs, and alcohol. Sometimes we also distract ourselves mindlessly, scrolling down on social media to avoid confronting that unpleasant feelings, or maybe even to find the same sense of self or sense of belonging. Yeah, so we all do that. And what it does is with mindfulness, when we come back to the present moment, we take note of this. We can become aware of this. Only when we are aware of what is happening that we are able to change it. When we are not aware, we are never going to change it. It's going to be eating us.
Exactly. You have that power, don't you?
Yes, yeah. So, yeah. And I also want to so that we can actually in mindfulness we can actually take notes of our first step of recognizing this first, right? Recognizing our habitual patterns, recognizing our behavior, and how we react first before we go into knowing that is shame. So step one, the remedy of recognizing is to practice mindfulness, as mindfulness practice help us to recognize our patterns, our thoughts, and our sensations, our perceptions, and all the emotions. So we want to do that first. When we're not aware, nothing changed, like I said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, it's a first step
Yeah.
in bringing awareness to the
Mm-hmm.
actual, and it's the same with any issue or challenge that we may be facing, really, isn't it? We need
Yes.
to firstly actually acknowledge it and recognize what the obstacle or what the challenge may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is a very, very important step, right? So once we recognize, we want to accept. So the second step is acceptance, right? Acceptance means that this is happening. That means we know while we are struggling, right? And it doesn't mean that we agree with what is happening, right? So what acceptance means here is letting go of the thoughts and the emotions and, and the sensations to simply be there without trying to fix it first, not changing anything, but allowing it to be there, to open that space. So acceptance doesn't mean that we agree with that feeling, but rather to soften our mental resistance to what is happening, because mentally we reject, no, this is not happening, right? So when we are able to bring that awareness and accept that this is happening, it's like saying, yep, this is happening. I'm suffering and I'm struggling here. And that opens up a whole new horizon for us to be curious about what is happening. So it brings the mental resisting down of what is happening inside us. So avoiding shame only makes the shame last longer because we're pushing it away. Yeah. So it is more of a problem than shame itself.
Yeah,
So it's like whatever we resist persists, right? So when we stop avoiding and we meet it with kindness, shame dissolve, right? It happens to me, it happens to a lot of people that I work with. So the second step, or rather the remedy here, is again we want to bring mindfulness, and mindfulness practice help us to recognize the thoughts, the emotions first, and then it can help us to open our heart to know that this what is going on internally, right? What are other emotions that we are feeling? And this allows a lot of space for us to understand and investigate what's underneath those things, right? How do we relate to what we are experiencing, right? Rather than immediately stop, pushing it away, numbing the feeling, I don't want to go into it, right? So these steps really requires our patience, and it would be best to work with somebody because it might trigger um, other secondary strong emotions. But if you are doing it on yourself, be gentle with yourself, right? Yeah. So then I'd like to move on to the next step.
okay.
uh, to heal. The antidote of shame is actually self-compassion and loving kindness,
Yeah,
right? So at this stage, we are already recognize the shame that's there, right? Buried under all the emotions, the strong emotions, unpleasant sensations, things like anger, resentment, and other fear-based emotions. And we have accepted it means we have allowed it to be there. And it only takes 90 seconds for our body to process those information if we allow it. Okay. So shame is present. We want to say at this stage, shame is present and being felt in the body. And at this stage, we may already know what have caused the self-blame and self-judgment, right? So bringing back to mindfulness again, not judging, right? It's a non-judging present moment awareness. And this means that we know that we are struggling or we are suffering, and where we are suffering, which part of the body is holding those energy and tension that hurts. And in this step, we want to really see and feel that our suffering is part of being human, is part of the human experience, right? It's always because we refuse to be human, that we are suffering. So it's like shooting the second arrow back again if you're not accepting it, right? So self-compassion, um, as defined by my teacher Tara. She said, letting ourselves be touched by the vulnerability and suffering that is within ourselves and our being. Right. As you may know, I learned under Jack as well, Jack Confield, and he said to find that strength to carry a lamp through your darkest nights, that's self-compassion. So this step allows us to really hold ourselves with compassion, to give ourselves the love that we need most, right? And why do I say that? Let's look at it, Marcus. All human beings aspire to be happy, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So we all want to be loved, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Is there anyone out here who is listening doesn't want to be happy or doesn't want to be loved?
No, I don't think.
We don't think so, right? So we are aspiring. So we want to be loved. We want to be happy. See, shame arises from a deep aspiration to be loved, to be accepted,
It's a
right?
need, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's where we want to give ourselves the love that we deserve.
Yeah, definitely.
So to heal shame, we need to go to the vulnerable place that needs to be loved. And that's our heart, our heart shuts when I spoke about that earlier. So the remedy here to heal shame, we want to practice self-compassion and loving kindness. We want to give the love that we deserve to ourselves, right? If you don't mind, if it's okay for me to share the practice here with everyone, is that
Yeah, of
okay? I'll
course.
take you
Yeah.
to a short
So,
practice.
I practice. Yep. How long does the practice?
Oh no, just 2-3 minutes. Just
Oh,
showing,
yeah, of course. Yep,
getting,
not a problem.
yeah. So then they will actually be able to do themselves.
Yeah, that's great. That's definitely something
Yeah.
practical, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it would be fun. It would be nice to
Yeah.
share that.
Yep, sounds
Right.
great.
So if you're listening to this, I'd like you to find a comfortable position. All right, sitting upright, or if you're lying down, just make sure you're not driving while you're doing the practice. Okay. So once you get a comfortable position, I'd like you to slowly and softening your body and close your eyes if that's possible. It will only take 1 or 2 minutes. So what we're doing here is to mindfully pause and give yourself the permission to be with yourself in this difficult time. It might be helpful to put a hand on your heart center. If you like, just to hug yourself, hold yourself, while you're sending words of kindness to yourself. So take a few more deep in breath and out breath. And on every out breath, just letting go, arriving where you are. Letting go of the journey. Consciously bring yourself here, in the here and now. And see if you can offer words of kindness to yourself. You may repeat after me. May I be well and happy. May I accept myself as I am. May I forgive myself. May I live my life with ease. May I be free from suffering. And may I always be held in loving kindness. May I be able to hold myself with kindness in this difficult time. So take a moment here to let those words soak into. You may add your own words. Whatever feels right for you, whatever word that you feel that you need to hear, and offer that to yourself. So just by acknowledging the unpleasantness that we feel, maybe it's the physical gestures, sensations, and sending words of kindness to ourselves, our brain releases dopamine, our serotonin levels increases, and oxytocin is produced. So that's this feel-good hormones. And research has also shows that the increase in this parasympathetic response help us to feel better. And over time, when we continue to do this practice, offer kindness to yourself in whatever way you feel right, and shame will dissolve. So this practice of self-compassion can be challenging at the beginning. So if this is so, I'd like you to pause and resource yourself. You might concentrate on your breathing. You might locate a space in your body that you feel comfortable, a safe comfort zone of yours. Okay. And again, if it feels too difficult, then my advice here is to engage a teacher, a coach that you can work with. Okay. So taking a few deep in breath, energetic in breath. Notice how you feel. In a moment, I will ring the bell. And when you hear the bell, I'd like you to take your time to slowly come back. How does it feel?
Oh, that was amazing. Amazing. Thanks, Ainee. I know that it definitely felt great for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of mindfulness and meditations.
So sometimes it's really good to offer compassion, to ourselves. And I want to point out also that self-compassion is not selfish, right? That's where we need it most, right? So there are other ways that you can practice self-compassion. Obviously, practice mindfulness and being aware and acknowledging the feelings and sensations, not judging yourself. But you can also think of what a good friend would say to you. All right, that's one way to actually shift the perspective a little bit. Or what would you say to a good friend when they are feeling vulnerable? And you want to offer that back to yourself. All right, so these are some of the compassion practice that we can work towards, bringing more compassion to ourselves, care for the body, take actions to support your well-being. Okay, and if you like, journal is a good thing, right? Write a love letter to yourself, that we never write. Have you ever written a love letter to yourself? So that is a good suggestion for some of you who might like journaling. So write a love letter to yourself. Express your feelings, let it out, right? Who are you? What are your values? Yeah. And you want to describe and acknowledge all these feelings.
Definitely. Yeah, that's powerful.
Okay, so coming back to the last step that I'd like to share here is to transform ourselves by really loving ourselves. Okay. And I mean, it's more like when I say earlier that our hearts shuts, we feel the shame, we really close ourselves up, sometimes to the extent of, like I said, social anxiety. And I also mentioned that as humans, we are inspired by love and happiness, right? So transformation happens when we allow our hearts to open, right? Letting love in and letting love out. And we start with ourselves by letting love in, right? And when we remember we want to love and we start loving ourselves. There's this um, quote that touches me when I was working on my own shame and guilt was the quote by the Buddha: "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." And we have to start with that. So in this last step, to transform ourselves, we transform by loving ourselves and by being compassionate with ourselves. And I don't mean pampering ourselves, or indulging in excessive food or holidays. Sometimes all this can be a form of avoidance, right?
Yeah, although obviously, like self-care things as far as, you know, eating well and getting good amount of sleep, things like that can all be, can all be general things that can help us with our general
Yeah.
mental health and our general well-being. But yes, not in excess. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Sometimes I hear, for example, oh, I'm so stressed and I need to go for a holiday. And what happens when you get back from holiday, you're still stressed?
Yeah,
Yeah. So what I mean is really learning to love yourself, be compassionate with yourself, is learning to develop a wise relationship with yourself, being present with yourself, what you need most.
yeah,
Right,
definitely.
listening to your needs rather than doing. It's really not something that makes you happy, but
Yeah.
it's here. So this is how being honest to accept, and with self-compassion we can respond to all these negative painful feelings, shame and guilt about ourselves in a way that serves awakening, and alignment spoke about earlier, with our deepest values. So I really encourage you to go into really looking into self-compassion in the practice to heal the shame and guilt.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, like you say, self-compassion is important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What we, the communication and the narrative of what we say, what we're saying to ourselves, because quite often we are our own worst enemies.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, it's so true.
So yeah, just like trying to replace some of those, like recognizing what those thoughts and feelings may be that are not serving you, and replacing those thoughts and feelings with more positive ones.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
excellent. All right, well that's been great. Have you shared what you wanted to share today, Amy?
Yeah, pretty much. I have shared almost everything unless you have questions. Yeah. Or maybe just a few last words is that I know there's quite a lot of myth about what mindfulness is and what mindfulness is not. So it's really not about changing up to a positive thoughts or stopping to stop your thoughts, is to really be aware of. So mindfulness is being aware of what we are experiencing in the present moment, and how do we relate to what we are experiencing, right? So you want to be aware of how you relate to your experience in terms of, am I reacting? Am I, exploding outward? Am I buckling inward, or am I avoiding what I'm feeling? All right. So then the second part of mindfulness, we call it the two wings of mindfulness, is to really bring compassion. Can I respond to what I'm experiencing with kindness, with compassion?
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we might just to thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I'm sure that there's a lot of useful information there, and doing the actual practice of the meditation. I think that's really great. I'd encourage people to definitely try that at home, and um, see how that can work for them, because
Mm.
it's really, really powerful. And I think maybe just to finish off, we can just share, I guess, how if people might like to reach out to either one of us, if they feel like they resonated with what we might be talking about, or if they might feel like they need some extra support, or they have a question, about today's event or today's interview, then they could feel free to reach out. They can also comment on this post as well, and myself and Ainee will respond to any other questions that people may have about this interview. So what we might do just to finish off is, so I know for myself, probably the best way to get in contact with myself is through my business Facebook page, which is Men's Elevate Counselling. So that's probably the best place, which is where this video will also be posted for people to watch this back. And of course, Ainee will have will share the video, I'm sure. So I'll just put the link. I'll put the link in the in here as well. So if people are watching the replay or anything like that, they'll have that information, and I'll also put the link in the actual post, like where the video is. And yeah, people can get in touch with me. That's probably the best way. And yeah, offer a 30-minute strategy session if people just wanted to chat about their situation and whether, yeah, how I may be able to help them moving forward. And I'll just throw over to Ainee to share her information about how people can get in touch with you.
Well, thank you, Marcus. First of all, it's really an honor to be here, and I really enjoy sharing this with you and the rest of the audience who are listening to. The best way to get in touch with me, get a hold of my Facebook is Ainee Cha, or you can find me in YouTube. I have some meditations, guided meditations, things like that in YouTube. It's still Ainee Cha, or you can email me directly at aineecha.lifecoaching@gmail.com. Yep. I'm currently restructuring my website, but again, you can find it aineecha.com. Soon it's gonna be up. Yeah.
Excellent. And what do you offer as far as an initial chat?
Yep. I do have a 45 minutes of discovery call. So do get in touch with me, and yeah, and then we can go through that discovery and see what how I can support you, and what we can go through that. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. All right. Well, yeah, I'm sure everybody will get a lot of value out of this. So thank you very much for coming on, Ainee, and we hope everybody has a great day. And yeah, if like we say, if you have any questions or if you'd like to reach out, then feel free to reach out to either of us.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very
Thank
much.
you.